Welcome Vintage Hollywood Archive. Jayne Mansfield was bold, brazen, and as sharp as a whip when it came to pushing the boundaries of decency. The most famous, lively, and desirable woman of her generation came to an end in one of the most terrible tragedies Hollywood has ever seen: how Jayne Mansfield could outperform Marilyn Monroe. Make sure to watch the video until the end, and if you are new here, don't forget to join our wonderful community by subscribing to the Vintage Hollywood Archive. Jayne Mansfield, naughty celebrity with scandals. The world's smartest dumb blonde. There are celebrities whose talent and appearances fascinate the public for a short time. And then there are stars, those rare performers who possess that ineffable quality that take them beyond simple fame to legend status. One of them was Jayne Mansfield. She believed she was destined for stardom from a young age. Mansfield dominated the 1950s pop culture landscape as one of the original blonde bombshells, captivating millions with her striking beauty, gravity-defying body, and vivacious attitude. Only a few of the 27 films in which the world's smartest dumb blonde is featured are remarkable. Regardless, her desire for eternity lives on, not only in the lives of her children, but also for the blooming famous for being famous culture she helped to establish. Mansfield, who adopted Marilyn Monroe's test-driven public character, outperformed Monroe in popularity ratings. Mansfield pulled 100,000 militaries to their feet while on tour with Bob Hope. Mansfield's influence on males was matched to Elvis Presley's on women, and she left riots in her wake. The world in the palm of her little pinky hand, as columnist Walter Winchell described it. Jayne Mansfield pursued a romance with almost as much passion and zeal as she pursued fame. Her first marriage, when she was 17 years old, to Paul Mansfield, the father of her daughter Jane Mary and the man from whom she got her name, perished amid her rising stardom. Mickey Hargitay, a bodybuilder, was her second husband, whom she married in 1958. Mansfield's third and final marriage, to director Matt Cimber, lasted barely about 2 years and ended in divorce. The final years of Jayne Mansfield were marred by tragedy and a fight to stay relevant. After the press grew bored of Mansfield's attention-seeking behavior, and the most photographed woman of the 1950s turned into a wandering nightclub star in the 1960s. Jayne Mansfield's dramatic rise to fame and fortune came to a tragic end in 1967 on a dark stretch of highway outside of New Orleans. However, during her short existence, she used every trick to gain attention, and she succeeded. Do you want to discover how she drew everyone's attention and why, despite her intelligence, she was labeled as dumb? By the end of this video, you will have all of your answers. Jayne Mansfield was born Vera Jane Palmer in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania, to Herbert William and Vera Jeffrey Palmer in 1933. She always knew she wanted to be famous. Jayne, as a teen, displayed images of her movie idols on her walls and fantasized about being famous. Jayne's world was turned upside down in 1936 when her loving father died suddenly of a heart attack. The death of Herbert Palmer created a vacuum in Jayne's life. At the age of 16, Vera Jane Palmer, who had just graduated from high school, eloped with Paul Mansfield, a 20-year-old. Jayne kept the marriage a secret and continued to live with her mother and stepfather while in high school. When Jayne became pregnant, however, the secret was revealed. Jayne and Paul Mansfield welcomed their daughter, Jane Marie, into the world on November 9, 1950. Motherhood, on the other hand, did nothing to hinder Jayne's ambition, and Mansfield's thirst for popularity eventually took its toll on her marriage. The young couple enrolled at Southern Methodist University in Dallas after Jayne graduated from high school. Jayne and Paul Mansfield, like many young newlyweds, suffered financially. Despite this, they managed to juggle parenthood, classes, and employment to provide for themselves and their little daughter. Jayne left her daughter in the care of her parents while her husband was away at ROTC summer camp, and she flew to California to study acting at the University of California, Los Angeles. The Mansfields briefly returned to Texas at the end of the summer session, but the Korean War required Paul's participation in the Army Reserve and a move to Camp Gordon in Atlanta, Georgia. Jayne's sunbathing and outdoor exercise habits generated a buzz among these soldiers and their wives, which made Paul envious. Paul Mansfield agreed with his wife that they'd move to Hollywood and try to make a goal of Jayne's goal if she could wait out his 2-year tour of duty. Paul Mansfield, initially supportive of Jayne's ambitions, relocated his family to Los Angeles. Paul eventually grew to hate the thought of Jayne becoming a celebrity, as the pursuit of her career drew him more and more into the background of his wife's life. The marriage fell apart due to the Mansfields' move to California and her single-minded pursuit of fame. which caused emotional and financial challenges. Paul was also affected by Jayne's alleged infidelity. He finally gave Jayne an ultimatum: either he or her career. He was on his way back to Dallas in no time. Jayne and Paul Mansfield split up just 4 months after moving to California. Her efforts began to yield results when she won her role in the 1955 film noir Female Jungle. Jayne's controversial photo spread in the famous men's magazine that year provided Paul Mansfield with what he hoped would be a weapon to gain custody of their daughter, citing it as evidence that Jayne was an unfit mother, a claim repeated by each of her subsequent husbands but never proven in a court of law. Jayne Mansfield, who was amazingly smart and had superhuman drive, meticulously planned every career move she made like a commander planning an operation. In the 1950s, the concept of the ideal woman was a voluptuous platinum blonde, like Marilyn Monroe. Mansfield rode a tide of publicity surrounding her as an heiress identical to Marilyn Monroe. Yet, as Marilyn Monroe strived for privacy, Mansfield wanted the limelight. Miss Photo Flash, Miss Cadillac, Cherry Blossom Queen, and Queen of the Palm Spring Desert Rodeo were just a few of the titles Mansfield had won because of her dazzling looks. The only title she never liked was Miss Roquefort Cheese, because it didn't sound right. Her physical assets were just a little too good for commercial advertising. Jayne'sMansfield.com, the official Jayne Mansfield licensing website, quotes photographer Gary Lester about one of Mansfield's first professional modeling work, a photo shoot for General Electric. "Jayne was one of the girls I used. She was way over to the left side of the picture," Lester recalled something. General Electric informed me that she had to be deleted from the image because she appeared to be too glamorous for viewers in 1954. She had a practical understanding of the importance of publicity. To help with her image, she went to Jim Byron, a former club promoter. According to Jayne, Byron was able to get her a meeting with a Warner Brothers producer. The producer, who had heard of Mansfield's story from thousands of other starry-eyed aspiring actors, advised her to settle down as a wife and mother. Following a tour of the studio lot with Mansfield, the producer promised to call her if anything came up. Mansfield was soon contacted by the studio for a screen test. She secured a 7-year contract with the studio within days. Initially, she seemed to have finally fulfilled her dreams of stardom. She loved walking around the Warner lot with the biggest cinematic stars of the day, and Warner's public relations machine kept her in the spotlight. Despite this, Mansfield's 7-year contract resulted in little work. After 4 largely mediocre pictures, Warner Brothers decided to dismiss Jayne Mansfield. In July 1955, Mansfield starred in George Axelrod's play Will Success Spoil Rock Hunter? That same year, Mansfield also got a controversial claim to fame after she had a naughty photo shoot. She was named Playboy magazine's Playgirl of the Month, inspiring millions of teenage fantasies. All of a sudden, Jayne Mansfield was on everyone's lips, and all of the studio heads who had previously rejected her reconsidered. The 20th Century Fox studio was so desperate to get Mansfield that it brought the rights to the play and signed her to a new 6-year contract, with the promise of grooming her as one of the studio's most prominent stars. Is it any surprise that Mansfield's life spun out of control with such a background story? Since the beginning of her career, many observers often criticized Jayne Mansfield as an overly done parody of Marilyn Monroe. Mansfield's breakthrough performance in the 1955 comedy Will Success Spoil Rock Hunter sparked the comparisons. Mansfield played Rita Marlowe in the play, a cliched blonde actress with a breathy voice and a dubious IQ. Rita Marlowe was written as a parody of Monroe and allowed Mansfield to express herself in a humorous role. Unfortunately, critics who mistook her performance for reality would eternally label her as a dumb blonde. Mansfield, who had an IQ in the 140s, according to some reports as high as 163, spoke 5 languages and played the violin, piano, and viola, designed her flighty femme fatale character for maximum impact. Do you think she deserved to be labeled dumb? Mansfield desired fame, but Monroe hated her public image and wanted to be regarded as a serious actor. As a result, when the stubborn Monroe was suspended by 20th Century Fox, the company hired Jayne Mansfield to fill in the void left by the troubled and increasingly rebellious star. According to playwright George Axelrod, Jayne Mansfield loved being Marilyn, whereas Marilyn hated being Marilyn. That was the difference between them. In a 1957 interview with the Washington Post's Lawrence Q. Quirk, referring to Monroe's pretensions to art, Mansfield explained her own unique appeal. "I want to strike out on the common trail. I want to be the ordinary man's concept of what a sensual, obliging, comradely, down-to-earth girlfriend ought to be. Her journey from Broadway to 20th Century Fox opened the way for her to become a movie star. Her first picture at the studio was The Girl Can't Help It, a Technicolor rock and roll comedy. Mansfield played Jerry Jordan, a tone-deaf mobster's girlfriend who was desperate to become a singing star with the help of a foolish, hard-drinking press agent. Eddie Cochran, Gene Vincent, Fats Domino, and Little Richard all starred in the picture, which was a great hit. Mansfield's next film for Fox was a refreshing break, The Wayward Bus, based on a novel by John Steinbeck and released in 1957, featured the actress in a rare dramatic part. The picture was a minor box office success, but it earned Mansfield a Golden Globe nomination for Best New Star of the Year. Mansfield would star along Cary Grant in Kiss Them For Me the following year, and she would reprise her role as Rita Marlowe in the film adaptation of Will Success Spoil Rock Hunter? Mansfield, now a world-famous movie star, owned a Hollywood mansion, a Jaguar, and plenty of other luxuries in her signature color, pink. She will be remembered ultimately for being Jayne Mansfield, regardless of her numerous film and television achievements. Mansfield's popularity originated from her ability to promote herself instead of a distinctive role. Her desire for the limelight made her a forerunner of today's reality stars. There was no such thing as bad publicity for Jayne Mansfield, and no element of her life was beyond bounds. Director of the documentary Mansfield 6667, P. David Ebersole, said in a 2017 feature about the deceased actress, "She really was the first star to create the idea that the public needed to know who you are, not just the public persona, but behind closed doors." With the release of The Sheriff of Fractured Jaw in 1958, Mansfield's meteoric career came to an end. Fox ended her contract in 1962. She became a victim of overexposure. The press, as well as 20th Century Fox, got bored of Mansfield's stunts and turned against her. The studio loaned Mansfield out for low-budget overseas productions. In 1964, Jayne Mansfield joined the touring company of a revival of William Ing's 1955 play Bus Stop. Jayne was once again following the footsteps of Marilyn Monroe, who appeared in the successful 1956 film adaptation of Bus Stop. Mickey Hargitay, a Hungarian bodybuilder and former Mr. Universe, joined Mansfield in the play and soon became her second husband. They complemented each other well with their flashy style and physical perfection. Despite this, Jayne had a string of relationships, including an alleged tryst with President John F. Kennedy, which led to the dissolution of her second marriage. When the couple divorced in 1963, they had 2 children and were expecting a third. The main film industry abandoned Jayne Mansfield in her later years. She could only play schlocky, exploitative roles in the movies she could get. In 1964, a month after her divorce from Hargitay was formalized, she married theatrical director Matt Cimber. He convinced her that he could resurrect her Hollywood career. According to MeTV, Cimber gave Mansfield career advice that turned out to be terrible. She declined the role of movie star Ginger Grant on Sherwood Schwartz's famous sitcom Gilligan's Island at Cimber's suggestion. Tina Louise, who had previously worked with Mansfield on Broadway in Will Success Spoil Rock Hunter, was cast in the role. Mansfield's final starring role came in Cimber's film Single Room Furnished, and their 2-year marriage produced another child. Her career commenced as a parody of Marilyn Monroe, and she seemed to be summarizing it as a parody of herself. Mansfield began a turbulent affair with her attorney, Sam Brody, and she also turned to drugs and alcohol to cope with a life and career that was swiftly drifting out of control. According to biographer May Mann, Brody and Mansfield's relationship frequently erupted into drunken fights. Mansfield's career and life were on borrowed time after she was not even able to perform nightclub shows properly. Maybe she had already accomplished the purpose of her life, and now the overall journey was about to end. According to history, Jayne Mansfield, Sam Brody, Ronnie Harrison, and 3 of Mansfield's children were traveling from Biloxi, Mississippi to New Orleans on July 29, 1967. Mansfield was set to appear on local television. Their car slammed into the back of a tractor trailer around 2 a.m. The oncoming danger was nearly unseen, hidden in a fog of pesticide. The 3 adult passengers died immediately, but the children survived. Jayne Mansfield was only 34 years old when she died. The wrecked car in which the actress died became a heartbreaking sight to tourists. Scott Michaels, the originator of Dearly Departed Tours in Los Angeles, now owns it. The star who always craved fame left the world too early, but not without giving us some good reasons to remember her forever. She is famous for being famous, and this is one of the strongest reasons for the world to remember her. Jayne Mansfield and Marilyn Monroe could easily be seen as rivals, despite the fact that they were only similar in appearance. However, Myrna Loy was also a big threat to someone. Watch this video and find out why was Myrna Loy the only potential rival to Greta Garbo.